It's almost every other day in America, I hear about some guy that supposedly needed a medically necessary prepuce amputation. I promise you, you will never in your entire life, nor will you ever meet a man who needed a preputial amputation. You will not walk by one in the street. You will never see one in a crowd. If you go to a stadium full of people for the Super Bowl, there will not be one man in that crowd who needed a preputial amputation. In fact, the closest urologist that you know, out of the thousands, 20,000 closest neurologists to your location, not one of them has ever met a man who needed a preputial amputation. So where are all these men that supposedly need this preputial amputation coming from? It's utterly ridiculous. I mean, if you think about it, have you ever met a woman who needed a labiaplasty? The medical reasons for a medically necessary prepuce amputation are almost unheard of. One of the examples is BXO or Lichen sclerosis, which is kind of a scarring of a hardening of the tissue. It's an autoimmune condition, and what happens is this tissue gets clumped up and scarred. And if you have scarred genital tissue and it creates phimosis, obviously that's something that will require a medical amputation because the tissue itself is become scarred. Lichen sclerosis is found 6 times more common in females. So you're going to meet 6 times more women who needed a labiaplasty than you will ever meet a man who needed a preputial amputation. Some other reasons are frostbite, gangrene, advanced cancer, advanced diabetic peripheral neuropathy. These are extremely rare. You're never going to find a man who has a prepuce frostbite who doesn't have frostbite on his hands and his feet and his ears and his nose. It's the excuses to mutilate children are so utterly ridiculous as to make no sense, including what happened with this man.
All right. So I got circumcised at the age of 25 because before I had the circumcision, when I used to masturbate, it used to hurt because the foreskin was way too tight. So this is my head, right? My dick head. Foreskin was right here. And you know when you pull it down, it's supposed to go like this? Like that? Mine was like, and it would not pull down. It was really tight around the foreskin. And I think that's called phimosis. So I went to the doctor. I told him about my tight ass dick. And I was like, yo, my foreskin really tight. I can't see my head. When I pee, I can't walk. So he tried to pull it.
So what's happening is this man was a victim of forced retraction as a baby. Because the American quacks are so uneducated, they don't know the natural development of the penis, of the human penis. So they don't know the anatomical development. The boy, when we're born, boys have the foreskin is fused to the head of the glands through this tissue called the balmer prepubital lamina. Just kind of like the nail bed, the nails on your fingers are attached to the nail bed. So what happens is, because we are told that our body is ooey and dirty and disgusting, which comes from religious indoctrination, sex-shaming religious indoctrination, that these are the ooey, dirty parts, that we have this really sick kind of pathological weirdness in our culture where we think that we got to aggressively clean these dirty parts. So what's happening is these doctors are trying to force retract these babies to clean the dirty parts. Well, that skin is adhered to the glands. And so in order to force retract it, you have to break that skin. And breaking that skin causes scarring. And that scarring is what leads to adult phimosis. A survey done by Intact America, out of the respondents, 43% were victims of forced retraction. That's a staggering number of men. This is where all this phimosis comes from.
Back. And I said, and then I was like, and he was like, yo, I have to make a part 2 or part 3. Wow, they only give me 60 seconds? This is trash. I'm excited to talk.
So, yeah. So this man went ahead and got his prepuce amputated, made the biggest mistake of his life, because what he did was he took away the main pleasure sensory tissue of his body. Now, he's never had full function because he's never been able to fully retract. So he doesn't know what he's missing. So all these men that were mutilated as adults, and I call it mutilation, they may have been consciously aware of the situation. They may have specifically chosen this because but the doctors are lying to him. The doctors are not giving him proper informed consent, which is illegal. The doctors are not telling him, hey, there's way less invasive things that you can do, such as stretching devices like phimocure.net, which for $19, you can literally fix this problem, and this man could have kept the most pleasurable part of his body. So he is not one of those men that I'm talking about in the crowd that you walk by. He did not require a medically necessary prepuce amputation. He was lied to. He was misled by the quacks because they want to make money so bad, they will do anything to make money, including mutilate babies and lie to men. And these doctors are so uneducated, they don't even know that they're damaging this man, and they're damaging his life experience. And most likely this man, because he had this medical condition that he could have easily fixed, will likely circumcise his sons. And now the cycle is now started in his family. The cycle of trauma, the cycle of psychosis, the cycle of this insane, incessant obsession that Americans have with cutting the genitals of little children. And the sickness of this society, of this social norm, perpetuates all the way into adulthood, all the way into men like this poor man being lied to and manipulated and used so a doctor can make profit. And this is sickening to me. Man, I wish I could have met this man before. All of these men, I wish I could have met them before. I hope that someone listening to this video understands that these doctors are not giving you the truth. They are not telling you the truth of our genitals, and they are lying to make profit. And they are uneducated quacks, and they shouldn't be operating on children or men. And we need to stop this insanity in our culture. Thank you for listening. I also forgot to mention how this is where it comes, where we hear these men, I got circumcised as an adult, and it's actually better. So how could it possibly be better to be mutilated, and how would you get more sensation from being mutilated? Well, if you had phimosis all your life and you were struggling to pull it back and it was painful to pull it back, well, that doesn't feel good, does it? So, of course, they've never had normal function. They've never experienced the inversion of their prepuce. The inversion is where the sensory tissue is exposed. It's supposed to be closed and adhered to itself so it doesn't expose this sensitive tissue at a part of time when the child doesn't need it. So it's supposed to be closed. It's supposed to be adhered. And this keeps debris and UTIs out. And also, let me mention one more thing, is that when you hear these studies of UTIs that intact men or intact babies or children in the first year of life have more UTIs, the reason they have more UTIs is because the doctors are force retracting the babies. And they're breaking the balloon prepubital lamina. If you look at their studies, in the studies, they say that there's this unnatural sac that is a breeding ground for bacteria that creates the UTIs. What do you think an unnatural sac is there for? When it's fused, there's no unnatural sac. When they force retract the babies, they're creating this broken tissue, and they're creating scarring, and they're creating the UTIs that they then claim that we got to circumcise boys for. Furthermore, when you go down the rabbit hole, this phimosis affects hygiene ability, right? Because if you can't retract, you can't clean out the inside. So phimosis leads to hygienic penile cancers. So if you have phimosis your entire life, you are much more likely to develop penile cancer because of the hygiene issue. So not only does this increase the UTIs, this also creates that supposed increase in cancer, which is a ridiculous excuse to begin with, because less than 1 in 100,000 men will ever get cancer of their penis, and it happens when you're 70 to 80 years of age. This has nothing to do with a baby. But that's how ridiculous the lies are that we use to mutilate children, and that's why this man is being mutilated and was mutilated today.